Hello, I'm Dr. John Cruz, and today I'm going to be talking about why smile. So, this is not an ADD, this is a more general mental health focused topic. Hopefully, anyone with ADHD can learn and benefit from this. Um, and as usual, I will start still with the take home message first and then talk for maybe about 20 minutes about smiling and positive emotions. So, the take home message is that why smile? Smiling helps your physical health. Smiling promotes good mental health and positive emotional states. Smiling enhances your social connections. So, smiles are not just a signal that you are happy inside, smiles actually promote benefits. So, they promote it within yourself. When you smile on the surface, that has an effect inside your brain. And when you smile on the surface of your face, it has a positive effect on other people and social interactions. And we have different ways of categorizing genuine smiles, which seem to convey the benefits I've discussed and separate from non-genuine smiles. And much of the research here, there's different camps who have strong opinions on either side. And I think most of the truth lies probably somewhere in the middle. It's not as simple as some of the simplistic scenarios suggest. So, jumping into this, why would I be talking about this subject? So, part of it is for at least 2 years during psychiatry residency, I worked in the lab of Paul Ekman. And Dr. Ekman was the psychologist who enveloped, uh, invented and developed the facial action coding system with his colleague Wally Friesen. So that's the system where they mapped all the different facial muscles and what those muscles look like when they contracted, when they moved, when they twitched, and came up with a comprehensive coding system for describing any face you could invent. That system is the basis for virtually all of the CGI software and programmings that make both comic generated and real looking like human characters look real life because they're making real facial movements that we recognize and respond to. Dr. Ekman was really interested in, he's still alive, interested in not just emotions, but then he also developed an interest in deception and lies. So he wrote several seminal books and papers on using facial expressions as a way of input into lies. So that's part of my interest in this topic. The more direct prompt was on the blog that I write weekly, mental health and many of them ADHD oriented on medium.com. A couple of years ago, I read a story by Amelia. She said it's okay to talk about her and use her name. So Amelia's article was about how strangers or people in the world at large often were telling her, urging her to smile, and how she really wanted them to back off. So she felt it was intrusive. She felt it was none of their business. She felt it was patronizing. What do they know what's really going on inside with her, or how dare they tell her not to smile? And one of the other points she made is that, if you're trying to force me to smile, I'll just be giving a fake smile anyway, and what good or meaning is that? So all those are important and valid points. And part of this story resonated with me because I had been a shy, introverted kid. I may still be, depending on what you think of these videos. I also think part of the reason I didn't smile for many, many years was braces. It was physically painful in those days. We had a lot of metal and wires that would cut your lips and mouth. So I had braces from second grade to 12th grade. And I specifically remember a fifth grade teacher halfway through the year being surprised that I had braces, or asked when I had gotten them, and I had had them from before the beginning of the year. And it's not that I never spoke. I was the kid that she could rely on. Whatever question nobody else was answering or wouldn't answer, she could call on me and I'd answer. So I could relate to lots of what Amelia was saying, but we also felt conflicting views because from what I knew from studying both as a psychiatrist and a neuroscientist, there are other ways she might have learned, or she could still learn to respond, or that there may be good aspects to what people were doing. So I wrote an article. I said, rather than it being a rebuttal, because I didn't want to be patronizing, I wasn't trying to tell her she couldn't or shouldn't behave or respond in a certain way. So I said, my response is more a refacial rather than a rebuttal. But my rebuttal was that, yes, your emotions are yours. Those are truly yours. No one can take them away from you. But your face is actually something you share. Your face is a tool for social communication, whether you like that or not. And again, what I've already referred to a little, what you do with your face has feedback information for you. So facial feedback theory, it's more than a theory. I would say it's well established. There's substantial truth to that if you create a facial expression, um, sadness, happiness, joy, anger, even if you don't know what your face is looking like, even if it is just through weird external manipulations, hopefully we'll have time to get into some of those, you are more likely to start feeling what you are already expressing. So if you make a sad face without even awareness that you're feeling sad, you will feel more sad. So again, there's feedback from what you're doing with your face to yourself, but there's also lots of research showing happiness is contagious, smiles are contagious, laughing is contagious. You are more likely to elicit that feeling in others if you smile, if you laugh, if you change what's on your face will change what's going on around you. So part of my message was, again, not trying to command Amelia or anyone else to feel differently or behave differently, but if she could hear what these people are saying, it's not a command, not an order, but hear it as a attempt at social connection. Maybe they weren't skillful in doing it, maybe it was inappropriate, but these are people who saw what she was expressing, cared about it, and hoped that they could make her feel better. If she could tap into that, then she probably would have felt better. So jumping back, and I do have a whole talk on this in the series, what are emotions? When we talk about emotions, we usually think of the subjective feeling, I'm feeling sad, I'm feeling angry, I'm feeling this or that, but tied in intrinsically a part of each emotion. One is there's a specific trigger that makes it happen. Anger just doesn't happen for no reason. It's usually someone's doing something that feels unfair and that you can't do about it. Sadness is about loss, it's triggered by losses. So specific trigger, subjective feeling, a facial expression. And work by Ekman in the 60s proved there were many theorists who thought emotions were completely cultural constructs, that our version of joy, anger had no equivalent in other cultures or was so different. And his work, and part of it was in Papua New Guinea, where he was the first white person these had seen, so there was no cultural contamination before his visit, showed that there were several basic emotions that the same triggers triggered them, and the same trigger, that doesn't mean the exact same event. So trigger, again, meaning loss triggers sadness, that you're not safe or you're in danger triggers anxiety. The same triggers seem to be cross-cultural, again, even though different cultures may be afraid of different things or maybe enjoy different things. Enjoyment itself seems cross-cultural. So other intrinsic parts of the emotions are physiologic arousal, and there's hope that each emotion would have its own fingerprint of heart rate or skin conduction or breathing rate differences. I mean, clearly all the emotions have an impact on our autonomic nervous system, but so far we have not panned out and found a specific characteristic physiologic pattern of arousal that's distinctive for each emotion. And each emotion has an action tendency. So it doesn't force you to act a certain way, but anger, and it's separate from the face, blood goes to the big muscles and makes you lean in. Most of the other emotions make you lean back. So shame makes you tend to put your face down, talk more quietly, and blush. So all of these are tied into core aspects of what emotions are. And there's been lots of theorizing. We don't know evolutionarily why any emotion evolved, but we can see things like fear seem to be present in other than ours. And again, fear is about safety or danger. So most of the negative emotions, it's pretty easy to see why they may be adaptive evolutionarily. But lots of people have questioned, why in the world do we have positive emotions? If you believe in a creationist approach, there may be a good explanation there, but why from an evolutionary approach should we have positive emotions? I'll sidetrack one aspect there before I jump into that question. There is significant debate still. How many positive emotions are there? Do we have just one big positive emotion, or do we have several distinct emotions, or are they varying on degree of engagement versus passivity? So we have things like pride, we have joy, we have excitement, we have contentment, we have awe. Are these all distinctly different positive emotions? Are they all just manifestations of one? Too much more. But the theorizing, why do we have positive emotions? Again, clearly they are tied with better health physically and mentally, but why they arise. So one theory is an undoing theory, and that is they are there to undo autonomic arousal from a negative emotion, so that they are specifically clear the slate, wipe the screen clean, reset after you're afraid, after you are sad, after you are ashamed, having a positive emotion more quickly. And there is some evidence, and it's weak actually, that having a positive emotional experience does some clearing faster than just following it with a neutral experience. The data that's most strong use very broad, that they collect multiple variables to measure autonomic arousal. And one of the problems or difficulties in this research here is that we have this term, we have this concept of general autonomic arousal, which is activation in the sympathetic nervous system and less action in the parasympathetic. But there's lots of physiologic variables, whether you're measuring heart rate, whether you're looking at pupil dilation, whether you're looking at flow through your gastrointestinal system. So we pretend there's one universal thing called arousal, and it may be there's 14 different kinds of arousal. That is still not clear. And what's the best way to measure arousal? It's probably what gives you the best results for whatever study you're doing. So an undoing theory is one. A different theory, it seems superficially similar, is what's called the generalized unsafety theory of stress. And that is, rather than stress being a response to specific stressors or individual crises in our environment, or which can be social as well as physical, that the native state of human beings and many other animals is a general state of unsafety. And so that's the default, that's ongoing, and it's only at periods of safety that we feel, and that again, positive emotions may help engender this feeling of safety, that we are, again, it's sort of reversing a negative state, but it's saying that that state is an ongoing default state rather than what we're countering a specific event. And again, not all these theories are mutually exclusive. So the next theory that comes up is what's called the polyvagal theory. This is the claim that there are subsets of the parasympathetic nervous, that's our rest and digest system, and that there are different anatomical pieces of it, one piece of which is particularly tied into social interactions, and that particularly childhood trauma or disturbance leads people to be wired aberrantly and more disturbed and upset. And again, that particularly social interactions may be a way of calming down or resetting that. Some of the work of Bessel van der Kolk, I might have butchered his name a little bit there. The Body Keeps a Score. He's a very prominent writer on PTSD, is based on this approach. And the neuroscientists say, without a question, that the specific evolutionary claims, neurobiological claims about the parasympathetic nervous system, which is driven by the vagus nerve, what's the polyvagal system, are just flat out inaccurate and wrong. Now, that doesn't mean that much of the theory is off. It just means that the details or the claims of the specific neurobiology that's underpinning it aren't particularly accurate. But it's certainly plausible that social interactions may have a special pathway into the vagus system, which may help activate parasympathetic and shut off sympathetic nervous system. And one theory I wasn't even aware of until I came across this, there's something called the oculocardiac reflex. So if you press on your eyes, and usually you need to do it for a few minutes at a time, or not, you don't need to do it to get the immediate reflex. You lower heart rate, and you can, again, not just lower heart rate, but increase activation of the parasympathetic, decrease the sympathetic nervous system. And part of what smiling does, a real genuine smile, is contracting space near the eye. So the one claim is that that's actually tapping into the oculocardiac reflex, and that's how it's actually having impact on the body in a positive way. So I talked a little before I launched this into the facial feedback theory. Some call it a theory. I would say it's pretty well established fact that, again, if you create a facial expression, and so part of it is having people do things like bite on a pen and give them other tasks to do. They are creating at least part of a smile, at least the bottom part of the smile, or contrasting that with biting on the pen with your lips. So the lips are engaging orbicularis oris, that's circular band of muscle around making a circle around your mouth. When that's contracting, it's pretty darn hard to engage in a smile at all. Clenching the teeth like that, like when we tell people to say cheese, is engaging at least part of a smile. The other part, so what we know is, again, through sort of tricks like that, if you make a person make a face, they will start feeling some of the emotion that feeling looks like. So it, again, is serving as a direct signal. Does that mean we can replicate it in every situation? Does that mean there may be differences between, again, types of smiles? Yes. But there's clearly some truth to that basic principle and some interesting studies. So when Botox injections started to be a thing for people's instead of plastic surgery to eradicate wrinkles, people who've had Botox to their upper face, so have limited ability or no ability to do the upper part of what is a genuine smile, those people, not just that they were expressing a blanker face to those around them, they had more trouble reading facial expressions of others. So there's fascinating implications again, but what we put on our face is changing what's going on in our brain, including not just how we are feeling, but how we understand or appreciate what's going on in others. So the work on smiles claims that there are two basic smiles. So what is called the Duchenne smile. This was called the Duchenne because in the 1860s, Guillaume Duchenne, who was a French neurologist, Duchenne muscular dystrophy is named after him because he was the first to describe it in detail. He was playing around with electrical stimulation of different facial muscles and observed that you had to activate both, again, the orbicularis oculi, so that's a round muscle around the eye, here, as well as the zygomaticus major, which lifts the corners of the teeth, lifts the corners of the lips. So a true genuine smile, now called a Duchenne smile, associated with genuine happiness, involves both sets of those muscles. We know people often give what are called social or polite smiles, which is just engaging that zygomaticus major muscle. And so the simplistic story is we have real genuine smiles that are, and again, it's hard, I'll get to this where both sets of muscles are engaged. We have polite smiles where people are just engaging the lower, and the polite smile may not mean anything or may not induce any real feeling, and the true one does. So the slightly more, and many people besides Duchenne have noticed this and commented this. Charles Darwin wrote a whole treatise on emotions and talked about this. And the model Tyra Banks in 2009, I thought this came out just during COVID and wearing masks. She came up with the word smizing, smiling with your eyes, back in 2009, way before everyone was wearing masks. And although, again, we dichotomize, this is a genuine Duchenne, real smile means real pleasure, about 20%. So most people cannot voluntarily contract their orbicularis oculi. So that's why it's considered, if this part, if your crow's feet are crinkling, if there's contraction there, that's real or genuine. But even Ekman, who is, again, one of the basic researchers in this area, who sort of often used as a straw man for claiming that there are only, Duchenne is a real authentic smile and everything else is a fake smile. Ekman himself was noted that about 20% of people can voluntarily contract their umbellularis oculi. Tyra Banks is apparently one of them. And many people, it doesn't seem to be a learnable trait. So most of us, maybe there are some who don't do it, who can learn to do it, but some people have claimed to have tried for 10 years without being able to do that, activate voluntarily. So you have to really be feeling it to elicit it and display it. So the story, again, though, is a little more complex than that. So one of the interesting things is recent studies on liars, and again, lots of information is conveyed in facial expressions. One of the biggest studies, and they claim to have more than 1 million images taken during this study, but those images were from 150 different pairs of people interacting. One who was an interrogator asking questions, the other, so two volunteers, one was in each round told to either tell a lie or told to tell a straight story. So they knew, and they weren't allowed to deviate from the script, but they watched the facial expressions of the person asking questions to see, can you detect whether this person is telling a true story or a lie? I mean, again, it was a very scripted about a specific incident that something happened in the lab. In that study, done just a few years ago, what was interesting is that the people who were lying about when the interrogator was asking the questions actually showed full Duchenne smiles. More patient that this group had is that part of what's going on in these liars is what's called duper's delight or duping delight, that there's certain enjoyment out of actually pulling one over on people. And I can say, you can certainly see this in certain politicians when they are lying. I won't mention names, but let's say lying about election results or what was stolen or not stolen. And they slip into something that's, pretty egregiously a lie, and they know and they break into a big fat grin that looks genuine. They're enjoying it. They know their audience is convinced that what they're saying is true. So again, part of what's strange is that a smile may reflect genuine enjoyment, but people can get genuine enjoyment out of lying to others. That's clearly there. The other really fascinating thing in this study, it was done by researchers at the University of Rochester, and I'm forgetting the name of the researcher, so I'll try to post it in the reference at the end, was that the interrogators were no better than chance at guessing whether the person speaking to them was lying or not lying. But the interrogators more often gave polite smiles, again, just the bottom half of the mouth, just the zygomaticus major part of the smile, when they were being lied to. So the fascinating thing is that they actually had information they were displaying on their own faces that statistically better than chance. And again, their guesses were only at chance level, but their faces knew when the other person was smiling. Not 100% fidelity, but way better than their cognitive processing all the information they could together. So again, this is showing the power of what our faces is doing. I probably am not going to say too much more. I'll just throw in a sort of few footnotes. Again, even though smiling is associated with decreased immune system activation, lower heart rate and other cardiac variables, healthier hormonal patterns, decreased sensitivity to pain. And there's been a fair amount of studies. The studies are not always perfectly consistent. Studying emotions, particularly in a laboratory situation, is an artificial situation. And part of the critique of studying lying and deceit in a laboratory situation is it's always a contrived situation. The stakes are probably lower and there's an artificiality to it. So how much that really reflects what's going on in the real world is hard to know, but right now that's the best we can go with. So I concluded the article, which was my refacial rather than rebuttal to Amelia, is if you want to smile, give a smile. You have something that right there you carry with you that can have beneficial impact for you right away and beneficial impact to whoever you're with. So I see there's some question, maybe not, maybe just a comment. So hello Dennis, welcome again. Dennis has said that his psychiatrist said that MDMA can alleviate social anxiety, and he wanted to know, do we know how well MDMA works in social anxiety? I will plead ignorance on this. So what I will plead is that I am not aware of any published studies to date. That doesn't mean that they're not out there, but I am moderately likely would have noted them if they are. That doesn't mean someone isn't actively studying it. MDMA can help with mood, depression, and that the other thing would be sort of anecdotal evidence that part of what MDMA, Molly is known for is enhancing social connections during raves or dancing or interactions. So it's certainly plausible, but I don't know if we have concrete data on that. So I did email that this weekend I will be on medium.com, which is the writing platform that I blog about mental health and particularly ADHD on. I will be giving 2 different talks. They are middle of the day Hawaii time, like 1:30 and 2:30, I believe. So I did send an email about if you want to attend that, it is free. There are talks going on all day, many about writing, but many about impacts of technology, other things in our society. So a whole bunch of interesting speakers. One of them will be on the role of humor in medical and scientific writing. That's using the Amelia article. And the second one is going to be about plagiarism and feelings of validation and violation when that happens. So next week's talk is going to be about a much grimmer topic of ADHD and suicide. It will be back at this regular time. I am having back surgery Thursday. Should be minor, should be back to form. I hope you stay healthy and happy, and I hope you keep smiling there. So have a good week.